I'm very pleased to introduce today's keynote speaker. Danielle Smogard graduated magna cum laude from Carleton in 2013, majoring in political science and international relations. At Carleton, Danielle participated in volunteer activities such as Kids for Conservation and the Humane Society. She was a student departmental advisor and a prefect for the Methods of Political Science research class, which, if you haven't taken that course, means that she's really good at explaining very hard concepts and calming jangled nerves. Danielle also aided scores of additional students in her capacity as an assistant in the right place. Her exceptional mentoring and teaching skills, and there's a pattern here, those mentoring and teaching skills also found expression through summer work as a camp counselor for the Northfield YMCA. As befits a poli-sci and IR major, Danielle studied off-campus twice, once in Madrid and once in Washington, D.C. In that latter location, she honed her analytical skills researching South and Central Asia as an intern for the National Defense University. Her OCS experiences reinforced her fascination with globalism and, as you'll hear in a moment, shaped her initial career pursuits. In Danielle's junior year, she was awarded Carleton's Siegelman Prize for her paper, The Evolution of International Criminal Justice, A Hybrid Solution is Born. So she literally sat where all of you are sitting today. And her academic success and concomitant ambition to make a difference in the world led Danielle to apply for and to be the first Carl to receive the prestigious Carnegie Endowment for International Peace Junior Fellowship. Just so you have a sense of how prestigious this is, only about 4% of the applicants are ever chosen for this program. As a Carnegie Fellow, Danielle became an expert on Indian politics. You'll hear in just a few minutes that Danielle's fellowship and her burgeoning passion for Indian culture and history, and especially for the people of India, led to her next role in rural India as an administrator for the Shanti Bhavan Children's Project. That's a boarding school that's dedicated to providing a world-class education to vulnerable and disadvantaged children from the very lowest castes. Just like when all the tumblers click sometimes when you open a lock, Shanti Bhavan provided Danielle with a rare opportunity to combine her deep knowledge of India with her love of working with children. The result was the kind of epiphany we all seek, the realization that she had a true calling to educate and nurture students. When her time in India came to a close, Danielle returned to the United States, where she currently teaches 5th grade in Boston. Among the defining characteristics of a liberal arts education are the ability to make connections between different fields and a bold willingness to leap across intellectual and professional boundaries. Liberal arts graduates are especially poised to see and to seize a vast array of life opportunities. Opportunities that may seem disparate when initially encountered, but that, with hindsight, clearly draw on the same wellsprings, are mutually reinforcing, and lead to personal accomplishment and joy. I know you will be as inspired as I was to learn how Danielle courageously pushed past the supposed boundaries of her own knowledge and experience to blaze a fulfilling and an important trail. It is my very great pleasure to be able to welcome home to Carleton College today, Danielle Smogard.
Okay, good afternoon, Carleton students. This is my first visit to Carleton in 2 years, and it feels really good to be home. It's a little strange to be here and not recognize the majority of faces that I see, but I'm sure I'll see you all again in about 12 to 13 hours for the first pitch at Rockblatt. I was asked to tell you about my Carleton story and what I've learned about the real world since I graduated 3 years ago. And I don't know much, but the first thing I noticed is that life is less of a goal-oriented plan than it is a series of decisions that will lead you in many different directions. and I think I made the decision that brought me here during my junior year. 4 years ago, I realized I really needed some work experience related to my major, political science, because up until that point, I had only ever been a camp counselor, and making peanut butter pine cone bird feeders was not going to get me a job in academia or in government. It was fall term, and that winter I was going to go to Guatemala with the SOAN department, but something was pulling me in a different direction. Instead, I made a decision that arguably determined the trajectory of my life so far. I decided to go to Carleton's Washington, D.C. program. I envisioned myself attending every open panel discussion that I could and reveling in the rush you get when you casually stroll past the IMF, the World Bank, and the White House. I wanted to learn as much as I could, and I was not disappointed. On the very first day of my first internship, a research position with the National Defense University, I was introduced to a very large man in full military dress named Captain Chandler Swallow, who was the head of the Afghanistan-Pakistan program. By chance, he needed an intern, and I was free. 10 minutes in, he put a 500-page book about Pakistan in my hands and told me to read it by the end of the week and decide which chapters he should teach in his grad school classes. So while my friends were stapling and copying and answering phones, I was making a syllabus for the head of a graduate school program. I told him I wasn't sure if I was qualified because I had never read anything more substantial than the news about Pakistan before. But he told me that if I could read, write, and think, then I was qualified. So I did all three. I read the book, I wrote an outline of each chapter, and presented him with my rationale of which chapter seemed most important. He nodded, suggested 1 or 2 changes, and handed me another book. This process repeated itself 6 times, and each time he was patient as I treaded through new territory, and increasingly challenging as my knowledge base and confidence grew. I learned that I loved reading about South Asia, and that one of the greatest determiners of success is having a mentor who believes in your abilities, sometimes more than you do. So the joy I had found in learning about South Asia during those months led me to apply for the Carnegie Junior Fellowship, a position with a prominent think tank in DC. I was told not to get my hopes up, that no Carl had ever gotten the fellowship before. But past failure did not deter Liz Seiner from editing my essays, or Kathy Everts from writing my recommendation, or Greg Marfleet from grilling me for 2 hours on regional political dynamics to prepare me for my interview. I ran up the steps of Willis, no easy feat, when I got the offer and breathlessly burst into Dev Gupta's office to tell her the good news. My future seemed set. I got a fancy fellowship, maybe afterwards I would apply to grad school or a Fulbright, and then I would work my way up the government ladder and be the first female director of the CIA. That's what I thought. But I had another big decision to make. In applying for jobs, I had not forgotten how much I love to work with children. So exactly 1 year after reading my first book about Pakistan, I was faced with a choice. Be a research assistant at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, or be an elementary school teacher with Teach for America. These were the only 2 job offers I received upon graduating, and they could not have better represented my dilemma: research or teaching. I was torn, and it was more complicated than do I follow my head or my heart, because my heart was also in my work, and my head was also telling me that I should teach. Ultimately, though, I chose research because it seemed right for me at the time, and so I moved to Washington. Something you should know is that when I originally applied to Carnegie, I thought I would be primarily researching Pakistan and Afghanistan, mostly foreign affairs and security issues. I had an internship and several books on these countries under my belt, so no problem. But if you didn't know, I'll tell you now, never expect things to go exactly as you planned. Turns out I would be researching domestic Indian politics. So my first day at work, I just nodded my head, pretending I knew all about this Narendra Modi guy, and I panicked. I was out of my comfort zone and way in over my head. But I remembered Captain Swallow's words: if you can read, write, and think, then you are qualified. So I woke up early to read, absorbing as much as I could about political parties, economic history, social changes, current events, anything and everything India, and every single day I felt like I was kicking, barely keeping my head above water. But then one day I remember reading some article and I understood the historical context of the author's argument, even though it was not explicitly mentioned. I suddenly could keep up with the names and acronyms in meetings. And suddenly I found myself looking at my name and my face in the magazine India Today next to an article my boss and I had co-published. The tricky things about one-year jobs, though, is that once you finally figure out what you're doing, you have to leave. New people were being flown in just as I had been a year before, and in one conversation, my boss asked me what I thought about a candidate, and somehow we started talking about my interview. He told me that it had come down to me and another guy, and he told me that I was not the most qualified candidate, that the other finalist had a stronger regional background and more experience manipulating quantitative data, but they could tell how passionate I was about the material. They could tell how much I loved to learn. So I had gotten the job, and I was really happy because I was essentially doing work that was easier than Carleton all day, and I was getting paid for it. My new friends were insanely smart but humble. They were talented and accomplished but really dorky. They were authentically and unapologetically themselves, and they were kind. They reminded me of Carl's. But something was missing, and I realized that I truly missed working with children. I missed their energy, their optimism. I had worked with kids my entire life, and at Carleton, I babysat professors' children, worked for the Northfield YMCA, spent time in a classroom every week during Kids for Conservation, and I even got to write stories and poems with a 10-year-old boy through my job as a writing assistant. One time when he was really upset about school and I was really stressed about comps, we yelled and threw stale donuts at the Academic Support Center building. So even though I realized research was not for me, I had thought about India every single day for a year, and you can't become that invested in a country and not see it for yourself. So I remembered a woman that my dad had introduced me to a year before who had volunteered at a small school in southern India called Shanti Bhavan. That sounds cool, I thought. I'll go volunteer and teach for a few months and then figure out what to do with myself. It was exhilarating and overwhelming to realize that all of my belongings fit in my car and that nothing, not even a goldfish, was holding me back from going wherever I wanted in the world. I could leave for India and stay for 1 month, 6 months. I could follow my gut and follow opportunity in a way that I never had. So halfway through my interview to be a volunteer teacher at Shanti Bhavan, my interviewer told me that she wanted to change gears. She said that I sounded like a good fit for a position they were currently trying to fill, the position of the on-site administrator. This person works with the principal to make sure that the school runs efficiently and manages the team of volunteer teachers. So in the middle of my interview to be a volunteer, I was suddenly being asked to be the boss of the volunteers. In shock, I blurted, "Really, but I'm only 23 and I've never managed anyone before and I've never even been to India, so are you sure? What?" She said, and I quote, that she liked my energy. The flight to India is really, really long, and it's even longer when you are terrified that you had just been hired for a job that you were completely and utterly unqualified for. I had no idea what to do to prepare, so I read a book on management tactics for introverts, and I honestly couldn't tell you a thing about it now. So I hope you see the trend here. I was not the most qualified candidate for any of my first few work experiences, but I got them because people took a chance on me. They could tell that I was pursuing something that I was passionate about, and that I would do the job to the best of my ability using the fundamental skills I had learned at Carleton. Breaking down information, expressing myself clearly, paying close attention to detail, cooperating instead of competing with my peers, and embracing each task as an opportunity to learn something new. Because you, Carleton students, you have something that goes beyond intellect. You are passionate, genuinely kind, and endlessly curious. Which is how I arrived in India. Wide-eyed, introspective, eager to find my place. And I found it in a small, beautiful boarding school 2 hours outside the city of Bangalore. Shanti Bhavan is a school founded by Dr. Abraham George, a man who was born in Kerala, made his millions on Wall Street, and returned to India with the belief that every child can succeed, and the dream to build such a place that would break the cycle of poverty in a single generation. The children arrive at Shanti Bhavan when they're 4, and they are supported all the way through college. It is a school unlike any other in the world, and when I sat down to write this speech, I thought, how am I going to condense this experience into a couple of paragraphs? What anecdotes should make it into the speech? Should I tell a funny travel story about how I was on a train for 47 hours and 5 minutes after my first shower, a monkey peed on me? Or should I be serious? And should I talk about what it was like to be a racial minority for the first time, the poverty that I saw, or the children who have experienced more hardships than any tiny shoulder should have to carry? I could tell you that I found myself in the foothills of the Himalayas eat, pray, love style and became a local by forging cross-cultural relationships. But the truth is that I worked from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week, because when you work at a boarding school, you become more of a parent than a teacher. At first, when I couldn't regale people with stories about the mountains that I climbed, I felt inadequate, like I hadn't traveled the way that the internet told me I should. The truth is that I saw so little of India, but I have also developed an intimate connection to a part of India that so few get to see. So when I tried to put those feelings into a paragraph, all I could see were the kids' faces, and that's pretty accurate, because they were the ones who made it the best year of my life, who taught me to piece together the little moments. Like when a 12th grade girl and I got trapped in the school building during a monsoon. The power went out, and we decided, stuck in the dark, to color. As soon as I suggested it, she squealed with delight and poured all of the colored pencils and markers out on my desk. We listened to music, we talked about college, and we sat in comfortable silence. And without warning, she burst into uncontrollable laughter. "Miss D," she said, "life is just so great and exciting. This is my favorite moment right now. Coloring in the dark, listening to the rain, listening to music." You know what? I think the key to all of the best moments in life are friends, music, and food. Without a word, I pulled a bag of biscuits out of my drawer and I smiled because we then had the missing piece. Slowly, a knowing smile spread across her face and throughout her entire body until she shouted, "I just love being human." I didn't succeed at my job in India because I'm a natural leader or because I never made mistakes, because I made plenty. I think it became the greatest year of my life because I genuinely cared about small things. And I know it's a cliche, but like Mother Teresa said, not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. The kids love to read, so I bought them books and I wrote notes to them on the inside cover. I smiled often, even though sometimes the second graders would look at my face and go, "Uh-oh, Miss Daniel is mad." I did my best never to make them feel like a burden when they needed something, no matter how busy I was. I let them teach me how to dance Bhangra and Bharatanatyam, and I didn't mind one bit when they said that I looked like an alien. I tried to be humble and own when I was wrong. It's really funny to be here, speaking about things that I've done on the other side of the world, because right now I live in Boston, and my life as a 5th grade teacher is very small. I make worksheets, I pass out milk cartons, grade essays, try to avoid doing laundry because I never have quarters, and I go to bed usually around 9:30. I don't mind that my life is small, though, because in its smallness, it is infinitely meaningful, and I'm thinking about one student in particular. For a while, this student, who's really been struggling, frequently accused me of not caring about him. He yelled at me in class, and he said that he was never going to be good at school. When we did our unit on mammals, he told me that his spirit animal was a tiger, naturally, because he's a 10-year-old boy. And he laughed at me when I said that my spirit animal was an orangutan. But 2 weeks ago, he sent me a picture. It was a picture of an orangutan holding a tiger cub with a caption that read, "We are in this together, pal." I have no idea where he found that picture on the internet, but it brought tears to my eyes, and it still does when I think about it now. Because even if all I taught him this year was the difference between T-O, T-O-O, and T-W-O, and trust me, they all know the difference. The most important part is that he knows that I am there for him, that I'm going to show up day after day and teach him whether he likes it or not. On the days when I question myself, I think of that picture and I remind myself to do what I can in the little time that I am given. So that's my life. Too many children, too few cups of coffee, new books, old friends, failing, getting hurt, forgiveness, long car rides, small victories, and way too much time watching reruns of Parks and Rec. Yeah. We all stumble, but some of us have a much easier time getting back up and pushing through the loneliness, the confusion, and the routine to find meaning. The key, I think, is to focus on the small things and to remember that they matter. My face isn't in magazines anymore, and I no longer aspire to be a spy, even though some of my students think that I'm secretly undercover. I still don't know where my life is going, but I have found a place with school children, and I think that this is where I'm supposed to be. It took me a couple years to get here, But if I had chosen to be a teacher 3 years ago, instead of going to Washington, I might not have been ready. And I never would have gone to Shanti Bhavan. There is a concept in teaching called wait time. Wait time is when you pause after asking a question, somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute, to give your students time to think. You don't call right away on the first student that has their hand raised, because they might realize that their original answer was wrong. Also, because you want to give other students a chance, and it might take them 20 seconds longer to find the answer. Because when you think about it, it's pretty unreasonable to expect a child or anyone to have an answer the moment you ask a question. And I think that we need to give ourselves time to think. Where am I going? What kind of person am I? Where is my place? Am I doing what makes me happy? Am I doing what makes me feel whole? Not only should we free ourselves of the expectation to figure out the answers to life's most important questions within 10 seconds of being asked, but the hidden value in wait time is that nothing beats the satisfaction of coming up with the answer on your own. And that takes time. So that is my wish for all of you. I hope that you joyfully live your questions and that you give yourself all of the time you need to find your answers. Freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, I wish you luck in your remaining years at Carleton. And to you, class of 2016, congratulations. I cannot wait to see where you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. That was terrific. It was thoughtful. It's clear that you can read and you can think and you can write. But it's also pretty darn clear that you can speak and you can teach and you can lead and most of all, you can inspire. We are really, really proud of you. It was wonderful. Thank you. Carolyn.